cryptocurrency is currently not regulated in South Africa, but the Financial Sector Conduct Authority has published new draft rules. Its head of regulatory framework, Eugene, is here to tell us why they want to regulate the crypto market, and courtesy to our colleagues at Business Insider there for their initial reporting on this particular story. Mr. Toit, thank you so much for talking to me, and good afternoon to you. What is the gap that you are seeking to plug here in as far as cryptocurrencies are concerned?
Thank you very much for having me. If you look worldwide at cryptocurrency and the developments surrounding cryptocurrency, there was exponential growth in use of cryptocurrency by retail investors. Coupled with that, obviously a lack of data, as it was largely unregulated in many jurisdictions, and most of these jurisdictions has now started to start implementing regulations that capture the trading of cryptocurrencies within the regulatory frameworks. Now, a similar situation has occurred in South Africa, where we see a significant increase in the buying and selling of cryptocurrencies. We see exponential increase of providers of cryptocurrencies, crypto exchange platforms and things like that. And what is quite concerning from the FSCA's perspective is that a lot of retail investors are starting to use cryptocurrencies and crypto assets to replace more traditional type investments such as collective investment schemes, insurance, investment policies, securities in general, shares, etc., without really understanding the risks. So there was a lot of developments occurring up to date in South Africa regarding the regulation of cryptocurrencies. It also led to the establishment of an intergovernmental working group that looked at developing a proposed framework surrounding cryptocurrencies, and specifically under the Crypto Assets Regulatory Framework working group. And they made a variety of proposals through a position paper that was published this year. It was about at that same stage that we saw a significant increase in developments in South Africa. Apart from just trading occurring, there was also an increase in fraudulent behavior surrounding cryptocurrencies. So that made us take a step back to see to what extent can we intervene and start pulling this into the regulatory framework.
Sure. So you insist there that the rules that you are introducing are not meant to regulate, legitimize, or give credence to crypto assets, but they will have an impact in people who basically assist people invest in crypto assets. What are the main changes that people will need to adhere to?
Okay, that's a critical point. We're not regulating crypto assets. We're regulating the services related to crypto assets. So that includes your advice and intermediation, for example, the exchange platforms and so forth. So what that means is that anyone that distributes crypto assets or that wants to advise on crypto assets will have to obtain a license under the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Act, which is the act that regulates financial advice and intermediary services. With that comes a whole host of requirements. So we're looking at things like more appropriate fit-for-purpose type disclosures being made to customers. If you want to advise a customer, you have to do a suitability analysis to ensure that crypto assets is actually very appropriate in the circumstances of the specific customer that you're advising. It also comes with things like a responsibility to act with due skill, care, and diligence when performing these types of activities. And then obviously it also creates a link to the ombud mechanism. So if there are disputes, customers would be able to go to the ombud to raise a dispute, which provides for more ease of access to resolve disputes than, for example, the courts. So there are a variety of requirements that would kick in and with which these providers will have to comply with.
Yeah, and this include them needing to show their capabilities as well as their sustainability. In other words, they need to show themselves to be a viable institution to even begin to be giving advisory services.
That's correct. So the FASE Act also entails operational capability requirements. So you must have proper offices and a way of how you conduct your business. It also relates to fit and proper requirements. So if you've got a past record of untoward behavior, we will not let you into the system. So it's all sorts of requirements like that that ensures only legitimate businesses operates in this space.
I'm interested in the requirement for intermediaries, right, to substantiate why they recommended that, a particular client should invest in cryptocurrencies, almost like saying you need to have some kind of reasoning that you can explain if you are called upon to explain as to why you decided that Mr. Simelane is suitable to invest in crypto assets.
Correct. So the FAIS Act, and specifically the General Code of Conduct, contains a process for advice and intermediation. So that also entails, as I mentioned previously, a suitability assessment. So before I tell someone to invest in these types of products, you need to know that the product is kosher, that the product is conduct a form of due diligence. And then you need to follow a suitability assessment where you look at the risk profile of the client, you look at the amount of money that will be invested in the context of its broader estate. For example, you don't want the intermediary to advise an old person to invest his or her whole nest egg into crypto assets, because that won't be a suitable investment in that context. So that's the kind of things that they will have to start taking into account when selling these types of products.
Lastly, what will be the penalties for advisors and intermediaries who don't comply with these rules? Will they have any bite, these rules?
Okay, so once this becomes effective, because currently it's just a draft proposal, but once it becomes effective and they have to be licensed under the FAIS Act, there are a variety of penalties that could be instituted. So firstly, if they don't come and apply for a license and they act illegally, that's actually a criminal offence and it can be referred to the South African Police Services, and we're also empowered to impose an administrative penalty. Then, if they operate within the framework, i.e. they come in and be licensed and they don't comply with the requirements, we have the power to impose administrative penalties, and the scope of those penalties are quite wide. So it'll depend on the nature of the contravention that will inform the amount of the penalty, of course. But the powers are there to impose any penalty which is appropriate in the specific context of the case.
And I see that you go to great lengths to say that, the new rules are not meant to, quote, regulate, legitimize, or give credence to crypto assets. There's something in that tone there, Mr. Du Toit, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that suggests that you sort of, as the regulator, not wanting to give a direct opinion on crypto assets, but at the same time, you are not entirely sure how safe they are and, what are the pitfalls at this particular point, but not wanting to interfere with people who are wanting to take these risks. It seems to me that just like many of us, you as the regulators are still sort of taking a wait and watch and see approach.
So there are broader developments underway and looking at regulating crypto assets more broadly. I think the problem at this stage is, as I mentioned, we're not actually regulating crypto assets. We're regulating intermediation and the selling of crypto assets because we don't have the authority at this stage to start regulating the actual product, if I can call it that. And that's why we wanted to make clear we're addressing a very specific risk. We're trying to, and that's a risk where we can actually intervene, and that's in the intermediation space. We don't want to create the impression that we're now saying cryptos is fine, go and invest in cryptos, because that's not the case. We don't have the powers to regulate crypto asset as it stands. So the intention behind that statement was to say we're not regulating crypto, so don't see it as us trying to legitimize it, as saying that it's something that you could or should invest in. It's just a case of us trying to address immediate risk, because we can't, seeing that we can't regulate the product, but these products will continue being sold, we at least want to intervene in that space. And that's the sole purpose behind the statement, is just to say, from our perspective, we're not endorsing in any way crypto assets, but we're regulating a specific activity relating to crypto assets.
All right, thank you. Crystal clear. Thank you there for your insights, Eugene Toit from the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. They're weighing in on, they're not regulating crypto assets or cryptocurrencies, etc., but regulating the services that are provided by people who give advice on that, but also people who are intermediaries. So people such as, you'll remember recently, Yake Kwinana there, who was testifying at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, I imagine would fall into that category, people who assist other people to invest in crypto assets.